Hi everyone, it's Nathan Fan, the Magic Asian Man here, and welcome to another Mixology Monday. Today we will be covering my personal favourite cocktail of all time so far. I might discover another one I like more, but I can't imagine it because it's tremendous and fantastic and simple. It is the Old Fashioned. Now, if you'd like to look up the history on the Old Fashioned, you absolutely can. I'm going to try to keep these videos short by talking a little tiny bit about the history, but really we're going to look at the preparation. Now, everyone likes their Old Fashioned a little bit differently. I personally prefer mine to be simplistic, the classic way of making it. There is a new trend where people throw in club soda. So lots of times, if you've ever ordered Old Fashioned, you might think you don't like them. Because when you order them from a commercial bar, someplace where they're just slinging drinks as fast as possible, they won't like you because it involves muddling. You take a bit of orange slice, you throw in a cherry, you muddle it, you throw in some sugar, some bitters, then you throw in some bourbon, and then you top it off with club soda, and that is how most bars prepare an Old Fashioned. Now, I'm not going to tell you that's wrong. However, I will tell you that takes away a lot of the beauty of an Old Fashioned, the simplicity of it, and doesn't allow you to focus on the flavors. You wind up getting this weird, like, alcoholic fruit punch bourbon soda that is not delicious, in my opinion. Before you go around saying that you don't like Old Fashions, you gotta try the classic method. Now, the ones with club soda, I think that became a little bit more popular because of the series Mad Men, and in the 60s, for some odd reason, there's this whole thing with club soda that they were doing. Don't know why. We will just look at the classic Old Fashioned. Now, in order to make an Old Fashioned, there are several different ways. I'm going to show you my preferred way of making it, an Old Fashioned. However, there are lots of variations that you can make on it, which we'll go over a bit. And also some people are doing some really cool things with Old Fashions as well. It's so wonderful because it's simplistic, but you can dress it up if you'd like. But I prefer nice and simple. It's one of my go-to drinks because it takes way less time than the martini. It's just a couple of ingredients, bam, you're done. So let's try to get this as quickly as possible. First of all, let's take a look at the glass you're going to need for an Old Fashioned. You're going to need what's referred to as a rocks glass, all right? Rocks glasses are usually identified because they're a bit shorter and a bit wider, as opposed to something like, this is a highball glass, where this is something for like a gin Ricky. Lots of cocktails are served in this. But this, so you just need something kind of short and wide. We're gonna go with this kind of nice crystal etched one here. And then you are going to need your base liquor. Your base liquor for this is going to be either bourbon or rye. Now, lots of people don't know what the difference is between bourbon and rye. I will tell you very, very quickly. Bourbon tends to be sweeter, rye is a bit spicier, because for a bourbon, they're both American whiskeys, but the bourbon has to be over 50% corn content, whereas a rye has to be over 50% rye content. Very simple. If you're looking to get into whiskeys, I highly recommend checking out some good bourbons. You can find some decent cheap bourbons, 20, 30 bucks. You can find a pretty decent bourbon. We're not talking like hoi polloi, you know, Pappy Van Winkle stuff, which can be thousands of dollars a bottle. But it's nice because it's sweet and it's inviting, and oftentimes they have notes of like vanilla, that kind of thing. So it's very, very easy on the palate. And then sometimes you get stuff that's very strong and concentrated. Today we're going to be using my personal favorite bourbon, which is Koval. This is a single barrel bourbon whiskey that is actually made in Chicago, which is slightly unusual because most bourbons are made in Kentucky. Some people will argue that it's not a proper bourbon unless it's made in Kentucky. That is not one of the classifications for bourbon as far as I can tell, but I can understand the traditionalists who enjoy a Kentucky bourbon. So we're going to be using this. This Koval bourbon is wonderful and delicious, nice and sweet, but still just a little bit spicy, good finish. And I usually sip this neat, but it also makes a really fantastic Old Fashioned. Then you're also going to need some bitters, all right? In this case, so that's what all these things are. You're going to need some Angostura aromatic bitters or classic bitters. Yeah, there's a decent amount in there left. If you want to get a little fancy, you can also grab some orange bitters as well. You're also, and so that's really, and of course you'll need either some simple syrup or some sugar and water. Whichever you prefer to do. So now I tend to just use simple syrup because it's just faster and easier, but you can absolutely throw in a splash of water and then some sugar. That just means that you'll have to stir it up until that sugar dissolves. Now, some people prefer that because what happens is when water interacts with whiskey, it actually opens up the flavor of the whiskey. It has something to do with the oils that are that get leached out of the barrel as the whiskey is made, the way that it interacts with water is that it opens up the flavor palette instead of just watering it down. So some people prefer the water and sugar, and what's nice is that you'll get that sweetness, but as you continue to drink, the sugar will slowly start to dissolve more and more, and so it'll start to get a little bit sweeter towards the end as you're finishing it off, or maybe you might get a little bit of kind of sugar to crunch on. We're going to keep it nice and simple with the simple syrup. Now, there are two other ingredients that I highly recommend in order to make an old-fashioned. That is an orange. What you really want is you want the orange peel. You want that citrus, the oil, similar to how we had the lemon peel for the martini. You want that from the orange, because that's going to just add a nice light citrus note, because you're having Angostura, the bitters are dark, and the whiskey is heavy, so you want something light to kind of brighten up the flavor profile and just make it really nice to smell. It adds to the olfactory senses, a nice smell when you first bring it up, and that's going to affect the way that it tastes. And then I once met a bartender who insisted that adding a maraschino cherry to an old-fashioned ruins it. I have never found that to be the case, but to each their own. Sum cuique, de gustibus non disputandum. That's about all I remember from taking Latin all those years ago. Now, if you're going to do a nice old-fashioned, one of the other reasons why lots of old-fashions that I get in bars are rubbish is, like I said, they're muddling in the orange, so you're getting part orange juice in there. And then they're using really substandard maraschino cherries. They're using these bright red things that are some kind of weird candied, syrupified, unnatural, they're like radioactive red. You know what I'm talking about, right? So what you really want to do is go out and buy yourself some Luxardo cherries. These are the original maraschino cherries. The reason why I'm saying maraschino and not maraschino is because in Italian, that SCH noise, when that H follows the C, it changes it from a ch or a sh into a hard k. So technically, the correct pronunciation is maraschino, but I'm a little less stringent with that than I am with things like espresso. I can't stand it when people say espresso, especially if I walk into a coffee shop and they're like, all right, I'll take a double shot. All right, double shot of espresso. I'm like, oh. So here are your ingredients, all right? So you need your glass, you need your bourbon, you need your aromatic bitters, you need your simple syrup, or just some water and some sugar will be fine, and then orange and your maraschino cherries. Those are optional, but they really, in my opinion, make it nice. All right, I'm actually going to put these ingredients in the order that I'm going to need them, which should be there. That's the order in which you need these things. Now, the beauty of an old-fashioned is that basically all you're doing is you're taking bourbon and you're making it a little bit, not necessarily more palatable, but you're making it a bit easier to drink. You're not focusing on all of the aspects of the bourbon, but the nice thing is these ingredients can help enhance the flavor profile of your bourbon without completely destroying it. And the other thing is it depends on how you like your drinks. If you know you like things sweeter, add a little bit more simple syrup. All right. If you know that you like things a bit more mellow, you can ease off of the simple syrup. If you really like the dark taste of the Angostura Bitters, then you can do more than you're supposed to. But we'll go into that in a bit. So here are your ingredients in the order in which you will need them. So we'll start with the simple syrup. If you would like to make your own simple syrup, it's very easy. Just take water, boil it, and then add half as much sugar as there is water. So if you have a whole cup of water, boil it, and then throw in half a cup of sugar and stir it until it's all dissolved. You basically are making this as sweet as you can possibly get water, and then you let it cool, and then you can put it into a little bottle or some kind of a pour container. Leave that in the fridge because it can spoil after a while. So all you're going to do is you're going to add I don't like mine too sweet, especially since I know that this bourbon is already sweet enough, so I just throw in a splash. If you need to measure it, you absolutely can. I would say keep it to about 1/4 ounce of simple syrup. But once again, this is the fun part about it, is that you get to experiment and play, and just, take notes and that sort of thing. So that way you can actually say, oh, no, it's for science. Yes, it's for science, baby. You blinded me with science. All right, Angostura Bitters. There are lots of other brands of like classic bitters. Boy, the Angostura is the best of all these classic bitters. And part of the reason no one else can match it is because it's actually a secret, which is what is in this. And this can go into so many other drinks and it's delicious. Some people actually do just shots of this. The bitters are actually very good for kind of settling your stomach. So this comes with 4 fluid ounces, and this is 44.7% percent alcohol by volume, which makes this 90 proof. So you can do a shot of this if you'd like. I was once in a speakeasy and someone ordered just a shot of Ango because their stomach was bothering them. So if you think about Angostura Bitters, so you're just going to want to do 2 or 3 dashes. I'm going to do 3 dashes. Now keep in mind that when it's fuller, it has less room to move, so your dashes will be smaller at the beginning of the bottle as they are when you get later on in the bottle. Just keep that in mind. Excellent. So now you're going to have this nice kind of darkish liquid in there. All right. And now you're going to pour in your bourbon. Now, I'm not a huge stickler for proportions when it comes to an old fashioned. I think you just kind of get used to what you're used to and you like what you like. I would say a 2 or 2.5 ounce pour is probably pretty solid. So let's do 2 ounces just because we're here. Let's do 2 ounces, and I'll let you know how that worked out for me. There's stuff in my way. Move, heathens. There you are. There's 1. There is 2. 2 ounces. Oh yeah, that's plenty. That's 2 ounces of bourbon. Good. Now, if you'd like I said, if you really like that orange flavor, you can absolutely add some orange bitters in there. That'll keep it feeling dark, but also slightly brighten up because of the brightness from the orange. Some people really like to put chocolate bitters. Some people use like a coffee. Coffee's really nice as well, like a cold brew infused simple syrup is also really nice because that lends darker notes to it. I once also had an old fashioned that was made out of rum. In order to do that, of course, it had to be a lot more bitters because rum is typically a bit sweeter. So you're almost there. So we've only added 3 ingredients so far. Really, if you want to throw ice in there and be done with it, you absolutely can. You absolutely can be done with it. That's one of the reasons I like this so much. When I perform on cruise ships, because very few people know how to make a proper old-fashioned, I will just mix simple syrup and Angostura bitters together in a little tiny squeeze bottle, and I'll bring that along with me so that I can order bourbon, squeeze some of that in, throw in some rocks, and done. Settled. It's also cheaper that way because then you're just buying bourbon instead of a whole old-fashioned. Now, so we're going to get to the maraschino cherries in a moment. Now is a really good time to add in your rocks. Now here's another place where you get to kind of play around because some people really like huge ice cubes. If you go to really posh places, they will have giant, like 2.5, 3-inch ice cubes that sit in there. And the nice thing about that is because the ice cube is larger, it maintains its temperature longer and it melts slower, which means that you get a strong old-fashioned for longer than if you were to put in lots of little tiny bits of ice. You can also easily buy little silicone molds that can make you 2.5-inch ice cubes, or even little 2.5-inch spheres as well. Some people really like those as well. I don't mind my old-fashioned getting slightly watered down, so I will do, you know what, I'll do this is a decent sized chunk of ice. I'm gonna throw that sucker in there. Now, if you'd like to just kind of taste it now, you absolutely can. I'm probably going to get this a little bit of stir up. I'm just going to stir here. Ooh, that smells so nice already. Oh, that's so good. All right. But it can get better. So now you're going to go in here now. If you've never seen maraschino cherries, they are dark. They're like black cherries. And they're sitting in a syrup. And it's, but it's all like natural. It's not radioactive red. If I can manage to skewer one of these suckers, haha. There we go. Ooh, I got 2. Excellent. Now they're sitting in a syrup that is very sweet. So if you don't want your old-fashioned to get much sweeter, I'd let that kind of sit for a moment and let the syrup drip off of it. All right. Let's get it down a bit deeper. Throw that sucker in there. You can use that to stir. Yeah, you can do it with a toothpick or a little, these are bamboo skewer type things. Don't know the right proper name for them, but these are, there you go. All right, and now for the pièce de résistance, just a bit of orange peel. Go and grab your knife. You want just the peel. You don't want to get any of the actual meat on the fruit, I guess. Oh, that smells so nice. Once again, you just kind of squeeze and let the oils go in there. And then you give a little rub around the rim. What that does is it leaves some of the oil just on the rim. If you want to get fancy, you can also skewer this with the thing, with the cherries, whatever. I don't particularly need that stirred up. So now you're going to get that olfactory brightness of the citrus as soon as you raise this up to your lips, which is going to affect the way that you experience the contents below. Ooh, yeah. Oh, it's just perfection. So very, very simple. Once again, sugar and water or simple syrup, couple dashes of bitters, throw in the bourbon, throw in the rocks, and then if you want to, maraschino cherry and the orange peel, and that's all it is. It's how many ingredients is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 ingredients, but only 3 of them are necessary, and there's only 1 liquor in it. And it's easy to eyeball, and it's easy to fix. If you put in too much simple syrup, just pour in extra bitters, a little extra bourbon. Boom, done. Too much bourbon, add in some more bitters, add in some more simple syrup. It's very simple. Yeah, but you can see why this is one of my favorite cocktails. Like I said, very simple to prepare. It's nice to enjoy because you get sweet, but then you get that lovely light citrus when you bring it up to your lips. You get the sweetness with the flavor of the bitters and a good bourbon base behind it. Ooh. Now, if you want it a bit spicier, absolutely feel free to use rye. Yeah, but I recommend using a decent bourbon, like Maker's Mark. Don't go any cheaper than Maker's Mark, would be my recommendation. Bullet makes fantastic old fashions. If all you got is Jim Beam, sure, but Jim Beam is like the Coors Light of bourbon. It's barely bourbon. Now, if you really like Jim Beam, there's nothing wrong with that. It is just the more and more bourbons that I have experienced, the more I realize it kind of opens up my idea of what I like in bourbons. So Jim Beam used to be just fine, but now that I've experienced more and more bourbons, Jim Beam just doesn't quite have the right kick, you know. The burn is a little bit higher. There's not a lot on the flavor profile. It's a very short finish. It doesn't linger around. It doesn't do anything for me, basically. But here it is, an old fashioned. Now, some people say to throw just the tiniest splash of club soda. You can, but that requires you opening up a bottle or a can of club soda, and that's just wasteful. This will sit around for a few days, and the peel will still be good for a couple of days more, so I can get a few more old fashions out of that. I feel like this should be longer, but I mean, that's it. It's easy. You don't need to shake anything. You don't need to do a whole bunch of measuring. Just 1, 2, 3, optional 4 and 5. That's it. Yeah, I could drink these all night long. I have drank these all night long. So, try out the old fashioned. Let me know in the comments what you think of the old fashioned. If you're having trouble, something doesn't taste right, let me know. Maybe I can help you somehow. Next week, no idea what I'm gonna make. Feel free to throw something in the comments if you'd like. Sorry about that, I was getting a wee bit posh. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay tuned and stay healthy. We're gonna get through this together, I promise, folks. All right, cheers. So we say drink, drink till the shame goes away.